In the flickering light of oil lamps, the vast marble halls of Rome glowed with a deceptive warmth. Shadows lengthened across gilded columns, whispering secrets of power and fear. It was in these corridors that Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, better known by the mocking nickname Caligula, began to reveal the shape of his reign. Once hailed as a beacon of hope, the young emperor's authority twisted into something Rome had rarely seen so nakedly displayed. The marriage of sexual hunger with political control, the transformation of intimacy into tyranny. The Roman world had long known rulers who abused power, but Caligula elevated violation into ritual. He did not simply command armies or legislate from marble benches. He commanded flesh minds and the dignity of those around him. The palace itself became a stage, and his courtiers unwilling actors in a theatre of cruelty. To dine with him was to risk humiliation. To marry in Rome was to wonder if the emperor would seize your bride for himself. To possess beauty was to invite imperial appetite. No one was safe. Not the senator's wife, not the soldier's daughter, not even those closest by blood. Historians tell us his reign began with promise. Adopted into the lineage of Augustus Caligula's early days seemed a fresh dawn after the long, weary rule of Tiberius. Crowds hailed him as a liberator, as the young prince, whose laughter might sweep away the gloom of Capri's tyrant. He was charming, intelligent, and skilled at winning favor. But beneath the applause, something darker brewed. Whether it was illness, paranoia, or the intoxicating effect of unchecked power, Caligula soon transformed into a man who blurred every boundary Rome held sacred. The most chilling accounts describe banquets, where senators and nobles reclined on couches, waiting for the emperor to speak. Instead, Caligula's gaze would wander over their wives. He would summon a woman with a gesture leading her away under the eyes of her husband, while the room dared not breathe. Minutes later, he would return his expression smug and describe in cruel detail her performance, her body, her willingness, or lack of it. What had been a gathering of Rome's elite became a ritual of degradation. Each nobleman reduced to silent complicity. Each wife transformed into an unwilling pawn in the emperor's display of dominance. Ancient sources like Suetonius and Cassius Dio paint these scenes with morbid fascination. They suggest that for Caligula, sex was never merely private pleasure. It was spectacle. Every conquest was meant to humiliate rivals, to remind Rome that he owned not just its treasury and armies, but its most intimate bonds. By parading his victims before their peers, he corrupted the very idea of family and honor Roman values that underpinned the Republic and the Empire alike. Rumors multiplied of wives stolen at their weddings, of lovers discarded after a night of incest, whispered with his beloved sister Drusilla. Some of these tales were surely exaggerated by political enemies eager to tarnish a tyrant's image. Yet, their persistence reveals something crucial. Caligula wielded rumor itself as a weapon. By allowing stories of excess to circulate, he deepened the climate of fear. Senators who doubted whether the stories were true lived in dread that tomorrow their household might become the next scandal whispered in Rome's streets. The boundaries of Rome's moral fabric bent and broke under this pressure. Marriage, once a sacred alliance of families, became fragile under his gaze. The banquet hall, once a place of convivial exchange, became an arena of shame. Even the sacred ties of kinship were rumored to have been twisted into tools of domination. To modern ears, these stories echo with both horror and a strange familiarity. Power unchecked has often found its cruelest expression in the violation of bodies. Yet, in Caligula's Rome, this was not hidden in shadows, but flaunted beneath candlelight, the humiliation of others paraded as imperial entertainment. In this theatre of cruelty, Caligula was both playwright and lead actor, directing scenes where lust and tyranny became indistinguishable. Those who watched had no choice but to play their parts in silence, knowing that even resistance in thought could be punished. It was not merely about indulgence, it was about control, the deliberate stripping away of dignity, until only submission remained. This, then, is where our story begins. Not in whispered rumour alone, but in a Rome where power extended into every chamber, every marriage bed, every banquet table. To understand Caligula is to understand how intimacy itself became imperial property. And as we move deeper into his reign, we will see how these acts of cruelty multiplied, weaving together rumour, reality, and fear into one of history's darkest legacies. Caligula's reign turned even the sanctity of marriage into a weapon. In Roman culture, matrimony was not merely a personal bond, but a transaction of prestige, wealth, and lineage. To take a wife by force, to tear her from husband or family, was to wound entire houses, to stain dynasties. Caligula knew this, and he exploited it ruthlessly. The stories begin with Junia Claudilla, his first wife. She was not seized, but chosen a daughter of the noble Junii family, a marriage alliance meant to tie Caligula closer to Rome's oldest bloodlines. Yet, her life was short. She died in childbirth before Caligula had become emperor. Her fate was tragic, but it was only the prelude to the cruelties that followed. With his growing power came growing disregard for consent, family, or decency. Next came Livia, Orestilla, remembered not for love, but for her abduction. The accounts say it happened at her own wedding banquet. Guests feasted, musicians played, and the groom, a senator of fine standing, stood proud beside his new bride. Then Caligula entered. His gaze fell upon Livia Orestilla, radiant in her bridal garb, and he declared that she belonged not to her husband, but to him. Before the stunned assembly could react, the emperor took her, the bride of another, into his custody. The groom was humiliated, the marriage annulled by sheer force of imperial will. Orestilla was elevated to empress in name, but banished within days when Caligula grew bored. Her life, her dignity, her future, all had been reshaped in a single brutal act of appetite. Then there was Lollia Paulina, famed for her beauty and immense wealth. She too was ripped from her husband, who was ordered to divorce her so she could become the emperor's bride. For a brief moment, Paulina was at the center of Rome's stage, displayed as another jewel in Caligula's collection. Yet, like Orestilla, she too was discarded, exiled, and forbidden ever to remarry or bear children. What Rome saw was not marriage, but theatre, a woman seized, displayed, and abandoned. Each union followed a pattern: abduction, possession, humiliation, and exile. No alliance was sacred, no bride safe from imperial desire. These were not acts of passion, but rituals of domination. Caligula wielded marriage as both sword and spectacle. Senators terrified whispered of whose daughter or wife might be taken next. Fathers dreaded the emperor's glance. Husbands lived in silent fear. Families once proud of their lineage now trembled at the possibility of their bloodline being bound, however briefly, to his destructive embrace. Ancient writers describe these marriages not as unions, but as violations, political earthquakes disguised as nuptials. To abduct a bride before her wedding guests, to discard her as though she were a banquet dish, was to defile the very values Rome claimed to cherish: dignity, continuity, and the sacredness of the family. Caligula's message was clear. No institution, no ritual, not even marriage lay beyond his reach. Rome had known emperors who manipulated unions for political advantage. Augustus had arranged and rearranged marriages across the Julio-Claudian line to bind allies and strengthen heirs. But Caligula's version was different. He married not for dynasty, not for legacy, but for sport. He twisted an institution meant to preserve honor into one designed to annihilate it. In doing so, he broke more than vows. He broke the fragile trust between emperor and elite, turning every wedding feast into a potential stage for abduction. Thus, in the shadow of Caligula's reign, brides were not symbols of hope or continuity. They were warnings. Every forced union whispered the same message into Rome's ears: your daughters are mine, your wives are mine, your pride is mine, and I will take, discard, and destroy them as I please. If marriage was one arena of domination, the banquet was another. Roman dining halls were designed for spectacle, marble floors reflecting the glow of oil lamps, couches arranged in elegant triclinium-style silver platters carrying delicacies from every corner of the empire. But under Caligula, these feasts were transformed from celebrations of abundance into stages of degradation. Ancient accounts describe how the emperor delighted in parading the wives of Rome's senators and nobles before assembled guests. Draped in fine garments adorned with jewels, these women were not honored participants, but unwilling exhibits in Caligula's theater of humiliation. With a gaze that could silence the room, he would inspect them like cattle at market, commenting on their appearance, weighing their allure. The room would grow taut with fear because everyone knew what might follow. At a gesture, Caligula would seize whichever woman caught his eye. Before her husband, before the Senate's most powerful men, she would be escorted into a private chamber. The doors closed, and the emperor's will became her prison. What transpired inside was less important to him than what came after. When he emerged, he would recount with mocking detail her performance. He relished describing their intimacy, not in private whispers, but in public jeers, turning a woman's violation into a weapon against her husband. Imagine the senators seated around those couches, forced to laugh, to nod, to hide the rage burning behind their eyes. To object was to invite death. To remain silent was to endure the public stripping of one's honor. Rome's elite had always prized dignity, the dignitas that defined their standing in society.